he used to have it all: fame, money, and being in the public eye. He was the person who made bespoke automobiles famous on TV. He turned raw steel and roaring engines into a huge business. He made a life that most people only dream about out of his love for cars, music, and old-fashioned things. But then, out of nowhere, Danny Koker disappeared off the big screen without saying goodbye or giving an explanation. Most folks didn't know that there were headlines that shocked everyone. Horrible charges that could have ruined his name forever, court fights that almost cost him everything, and a quiet that made supporters uneasy. What really happened to Danny Koker? People only saw what the cameras let them see, and they never found out what was really going on behind those garage doors. You will be shocked at what he got in return for all the hard work he did for others. The secret story behind Danny Koker. He never went to college to learn how to fix things. He never learned about engines in a school. He didn't have a fancy degree or a well-known mentor to teach him how to do things. Danny Koker learned everything he knows about cars by working on them himself. Taking things apart, becoming lost in the mess of metal and wiring, and somehow putting them back together better than they were before. Danny Koker, who would later be recognized as the face of counting cars, didn't start his journey in a fancy garage or a TV studio. Instead, he started in his childhood garage with a wrench in his hand and a big goal in his heart. And that dream started when he was only 8 years old. Danny was fixing up his first motorcycle in his family's garage at a time when most kids were playing video games or riding their bikes around the block. But that initial endeavor wasn't just for fun. It was a spark that would start a lifelong fascination. It was the start of a journey that would take him from that modest garage to the dazzling lights of Las Vegas and then into the homes of millions of fans all over the world. But before Danny started making custom automobiles for famous people or running a business empire, he had another interesting side that not many admirers know about. He wasn't only crazy about vehicles. He was also a performer. Danny grew raised with TV, as you can see. He got a rare view inside the entertainment business because his family controlled Channel 33 in Las Vegas. Danny started learning how television worked behind the scenes when he was very young. He learned about sound, cameras, production, and how to present. This behind-the-scenes look would shape who he was and who he would become in a big way. That's how Count Cool Writer came to be. Before he started counting cars, Danny Koker dressed up as a vampire and hosted a horror movie show in Las Vegas. He hosted scary movies on Channel 33 late at night under the name Count Cool Writer. He wore full makeup and a cape and acted like an old-school horror presenter. But this wasn't just a trick. It was typical Danny, who knew how to mix his life as a rock star with his showmanship and artistic ability. And it was this one-of-a-kind mix of his great love for machinery. He was the right person for something much greater since he knew how TV worked and had a personality that was bigger than life. The world finally caught up with Danny's energy and vision in 2012. That was the year the History Channel showed the first episode of Counting Cars. The show wasn't only about sprucing up ancient cars. It was about the tales behind the cars, the love that went into each restoration, and the close relationship between Danny and his staff. And most importantly, it was about keeping something beautiful alive in a world that doesn't always value workmanship. Counting automobiles stood out from the very first episode. And that's because Danny brought something to the screen that couldn't be faked. You could tell how much he loved what he did in every episode, whether he was saving a rusty old car from a junkyard or making a unique vehicle for a rock star. It was on from 2012 until 2020 and soon became one of the most popular reality automobile shows on TV. People didn't only watch the show to see automobiles, they watched it to see Danny with his crazy hair, sunglasses, passion, and love for what he did. But the show was just the start. Danny was constructing an empire behind the scenes. Everything revolved around his store, Count's Kustoms. The shop was hidden away in Las Vegas, yet car fans and tourists from all over the world came to see it. It wasn't just an ordinary business, it was a museum of passion and a place where dreams came back to life via paint, chrome, and sweat. Danny didn't stop there, either. He opened Count's Vamped Rock Bar and Grill, a live music venue in Vegas that combined two of his favorite things, cars and rock music. People flocked to the restaurant for the live music and drinks, and it also became a small part of Danny Koker's universe. Danny never does anything halfway, so he also opened Count's Tattoo Company, which is in the Rio Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. Danny Koker has done a lot with his businesses. He has made unique bikes for some of the most famous rock stars. Alice Cooper, Rob Zombie, and Ozzy Osbourne all trusted him with their cars and their legacies. Because of artists like that, an automobile is more than just a way to get about. Danny Koker was the best at understanding that. But you would be wrong if you assumed his talent ended in the garage. Danny has always loved music. He is the lead singer of the hard rock band Count 77, which is true. And he has put the same kind of heart and soul into his music that he did into his vehicles. His band has gone on tour, made music, and brought the heat to every stage they played on. If you ever doubted his musical skills, you should know that Danny played in Carnegie Hall when he was only 11 years old. Danny Koker has always been a unique individual. But even the most skilled, driven, and successful people have to deal with problems in life. Danny has had a lot of problems in the past few years, notably with his business. The legal storm is going on behind the garage doors. Count's Kustoms was more than just a car shop in Las Vegas for many years. It was the most important spot in Danny Koker's life, where he produced unique automobiles with hard labor, expertise, and real enthusiasm. But even the strongest empires have problems, and often those problems don't show themselves until it's too late. Danny's problems arrived slowly, through paperwork, court disputes, attorneys, and alarming claims. It all started with what looked like a normal complaint from a couple, Jeanette and Paul Hurt. They walked into Count's Kustoms with a picture of what they wanted their car to look like, and they thought Danny and his staff were the only ones who could make it happen. They had witnessed the spectacle and the magic behind the brand, after all. They gave the shop $50,000 to fix up their 1967 Ford Mustang coupe and left it there. The Hurts were told that the restoration would be shown on the History Channel's Counting Cars, according to the complaint. But subsequently, they were told that the project would not be shown on TV. When they went to the business, they found out that their automobile hadn't been worked on and that the car they bought wasn't even the model they had agreed on. They also said that their car was in worse shape when they got it back than when they left it. They further said that Count's Kustoms kept their payment and refused to give them a refund, even though they asked for one. The court case's outcome is still not public knowledge, but the harm to the business's reputation and maybe even Danny's own heart had already been done. It hurts a lot for a man who built everything on his reputation and passion to be accused of not delivering. But it wasn't the end of his legal problems. Another storm came in soon after. This time, it came from inside Count's Kustoms in the guise of a guy named Joseph Frontiera. Joseph was more than just an employee. He was in charge of the shop's money, paperwork, and other important things that keep it running properly. Frontiera was meant to keep the books in order while Danny worked on cars, cameras, and clients. But instead of that, he was accused of stealing more than $75,000 from the company. According to legal filings and reports that came out later, Frontiera used corporate money to pay for his own personal costs, such as a down payment on a Range Rover and airline tickets for his own private travel. These weren't mistakes or problems with the books. They were planned activities and stealthy thefts that happened behind closed doors. And sadly, those things had big effects on Danny's business. Count's Kustoms had to pay late fees and deal with tax problems. Supposedly because of how Joseph managed or misused the company's money. It wasn't only that they lost the money. It was the ripple effect. Unpaid bills. The financial records were a mess. Danny was left to clean up the mess while keeping his store open and his good name. The treachery stung much more. Motor Trend, a company outside of the network that used to be called Velocity and aired Counting Cars, suggested Joseph Frontiera. Danny felt faith in that suggestion and thought the person they sent would be professional, dependable, and true to Count's Kustoms. But after the embezzlement was found out, Danny didn't just fire Frontiera. He went after the folks who brought him into the group. Danny is said to have sued the recruitment company that suggested Frontiera, saying they didn't give him important information regarding Joseph's past, including his past of acting badly at earlier jobs. If Danny had known more, he would never have let him near his business. Unfortunately, at the time all of this came out, Joseph Frontiera had already left Nevada, supposedly to escape to another state, which made the judicial process even more difficult. Criminal charges couldn't be brought easily because of where he moved and how the charges were set up. And a lot of the struggle had to happen in civil court. To many on the outside, this would have seemed like just another business controversy. But for Danny Koker, this was a personal matter. This hurt a lot. It's one thing when someone messes with your money, your name, and your brand. But when they meddle with the dream you've been working on since you were a kid and put your whole life into, that's a whole other story. The affair left a lot of mess behind. There were legal costs and a lot of damage management that needed to be done. He continued going, though. But Danny's problems didn't stop here. In reality, he's had to deal with some alarming claims that have hurt his reputation. The rumors and accusations about the arrest. It's hard to believe that Danny Koker, who became famous for turning rust into gold and restoring ancient cars into works of art, would be involved in any kind of scandal. But being famous has a strange way of bringing in rumors. And even Danny, who is a strong person, hasn't been able to stay away from the darker parts of the spotlight. The notion that he was detained for having a controlled substance is one of the most persistent tales that have followed him over the years. At first, it was only a rumor online, but it quickly grew into a full-blown debate without any real proof. But the truth is that there are no official documents that show Danny was ever arrested for having drugs or anything like that. Because there isn't any proof that links him legally to the claims being made online. Danny is a private person, even if he is on TV, so that doesn't help. He doesn't talk about every facet of his life online, and he doesn't conduct interviews to clear the air every time something strange happens. And that silence has just made the rumors stronger. He did spoke about the accusations in a sit-down interview once, and he stated, "It's frustrating because it's so not me. I'm a conservative Christian guy, and I'm all about God, family, my country, my team, and my people." But this isn't the only scandal that has followed him. For years, another question has tormented his most renowned creation, counting automobiles, and some people have started to doubt the show's veracity. People will eventually ask this kind of inquiry about practically every reality show. And to be fair, the longer a show is on, the more people start to see the flaws in it. Some fans began to say that some scenes felt too polished and too well rehearsed. For instance, deals that were done in just a few minutes and customers that came in with a hazy notion and left with a beautiful bespoke build, with no arguments, delays, or problems in real life. That's when the accusations really started. Some people who watched the show said online that some of the car builds were fake. Or that some customers were actors hired to make things more interesting. Some others said that Danny's reactions to some initiatives appeared a little too flawless, as if he had previously seen what was going to happen. One Reddit post even went through a certain episode frame by frame to try to show that one of the automobiles was never worked on at the shop. The corporation that made the show has never directly answered these claims. Danny and his colleagues have also never publicly said whether or not every portion of the show is real. But maybe that's simply part of the design to keep people on the edge of their seats. Some longtime fans, though, were still a little uneasy because things weren't clear. But there were more rumors concerning Danny Koker. In fact, they've gotten bigger as the years went by and the spotlight got brighter. And he's had to deal with those that were aimed at his family and personal life, which he works hard to keep out of the public eye. There are rumors about Danny Koker's private life. Danny Koker made a living by fixing up old vehicles and bikes and making them look as they did when they were new. Even if he is strong on screen and does well in business, his personal life hasn't always been simple. Danny has had to deal with grief, fear, and nasty rumors that would shake even the toughest people when he is not on camera or in a car. A fake report saying that Danny Koker had died was one of the most devastating and heartbreaking rumors to ever spread online. It all began with a link to an obituary. Soon, admirers all over social media were offering their condolences and saying how startled and heartbroken they were that the man who counted automobiles was reportedly gone. But it wasn't Danny who had died, it was his dad. Years before, Danny Koker Sr., a well-known gospel musician and songwriter, had died. Danny loved music because of him, and they were very close. But when the obituary started going around again, out of context, people got it wrong. Because Danny had been noticeably stepping back from public appearances about that period. There were no new episodes of Counting Cars, which made fans wonder where he was. The absence in the obituary that came back to life caused the bewilderment. And in today's environment, when social media often trades facts for quick clicks, the fake news spread like wildfire. And it must have hurt Danny and his family a lot. But that wasn't the only problem he and his family had to deal with. At about the same time, his wife, Koker, was into a bad vehicle accident. Like everything else in their marriage, the details were generally kept to themselves. But admirers who had been following her carefully through her work at Counts Vamp started to notice that she wasn't showing up to events or giving updates. But the most shocking thing happened when fake news spread online saying that Koker had died in the crash. Some people even incorrectly linked her to someone else with a similar name, and the mistake spread like wildfire. People were sad. Some people even sent Danny their sympathies. It was a mess. And for a while, the silence made it worse. Came forth in the end to set the record straight. She was alive and had made it through, but it took a long time to fix the story. She had to take time to heal both physically and mentally, so it's understandable that she didn't rush to speak out. The damage had already been done, though. Fans were worried that something was very wrong behind the scenes because of the false death reports about Danny, the accident rumors about Koker, and the fact that they weren't in the spotlight. They weren't completely wrong, though, because behind the fame, Danny Koker is still human, and success, no matter how big, doesn't protect you from private pain. Danny doesn't talk about his personal life very often, but it's evident that he's been carrying the weight of loss and strain for a long time. The death of his father, who had a big impact on his early musical impulses, was a turning point. On top of that, he has to cope with operating multiple businesses, keeping up with a hit TV program, litigation and betrayals, and the continual pressure to look ideal for the cameras. Fans have been quietly wondering about his health for years now. Danny's long absences from the public eye and the evident effects on his looks have only made people more curious, even if there is no official diagnosis. But Danny has never been one to talk about his problems. He goes back to work and leans on his music instead. And most importantly, he stays faithful to his close friends and family who have been there for him when the cameras stopped rolling. But the years have taken their toll on Danny, who is really tough. And fans are starting to ask the question they've been too scared to express out loud. Is Danny Koker all right? Danny's health problems, the rumors about him, and his disappearance. Black Shades, Danny Koker's famous bandana, was on TV all the time. And a strong love for machinery from the past. But then, virtually without making a sound, he began to fade from view. And no one really knew why. But it didn't happen all at once. Fans first spotted anything small. Danny looked like he had lost weight, but not in a healthy way that comes with a new diet or exercise plan. This was not the same. People started to worry about his health since his face seemed more drawn, his body was notably thinner, and he looked sick. Some admirers were afraid of the worst. And just like that, the ideas started to spread. The rumor that Danny had cancer was probably the most shocking. People were worried and whispered about it, and side-by-side images showed how dramatically his looks had altered. But reports from people close to him say that his sudden weight loss is due to stress from his job, which regularly requires him to work up to 18 hours a day. It's not simple to run an empire like Count's Kustoms. Danny's life was a continual frenzy. He had custom projects to work on, famous clientele to deal with, a TV production schedule to keep, businesses in Vegas, and his band was always on tour. And stress, if you don't deal with it, doesn't only make you tired. It begins to have an effect on your body. Some people who know have also said that the weight loss may have been caused by stress-related disease, which may have become worse because of how hard it was to keep up with such a demanding lifestyle for so long. People kept talking about the claims, even though Danny hasn't said anything about them. The questions regarding why counting cars seemed to disappear from the screens also didn't go away. The show that made Danny famous stopped airing new episodes in 2020. People thought it was just a pause at first. Reality programs routinely take breaks between seasons, so it's not surprising. But when the months stretched into years with no formal news, worry over the likelihood of Danny's retirement grew. Some people thought he left on purpose, looking for tranquility after years of working under a lot of stress. Some people thought it wasn't his choice at all and that Counting Cars had been cancelled because the ratings were going down or there were creative disputes with the network. But Danny has never explained again. There was no last interview or goodbye. He just disappeared from the screen, leaving admirers to wonder what truly happened. And it's not only the TV show, he hasn't been seen in public as often as he used to be. Some people have seen him at Kustoms and his other business, but others say he appears exhausted and quiet, like someone who has been through something huge but doesn't want to talk about it. And maybe that's just how Danny Koker has always been. Danny has always kept the true material close to the chest, whereas other famous people rush to share every move they make online. But people have noticed that he's not there. And for fans who grew up watching him bring dead engines back to life, it has been hard to see Danny go without saying anything. But what happened to Danny Koker when Counting Cars finished, and what has he been up to since then? That is the major issue that is still unanswered. What is Danny Koker doing now? So, after all the success, the rumors, the people who went missing, and the personal storms, where is Danny Koker now? The truth is that Danny Koker never really left, even though he's not on TV anymore. He just moved away from the spotlight. His silence has made admirers curious, yet his work has quietly gone on behind the scenes. First and foremost, Kustoms, the most important part of his commercial empire, is still open. Even with all the lawsuits, controversies involving employees, and other things that have happened over the years, the store is still open in Las Vegas. People are still making custom autos. Tours are still going on. Every day, people come by hoping to see Danny or one of the amazing cars that the program made famous. But Count's Kustoms are only part of the picture. Count's Vamped Rock Bar and Grill is another significant part of his life that combines his love of music with his Vegas origins. The bar still has concerts, late-night parties, and performances by both local and touring bands. And sometimes, when the time is right, Danny himself goes on stage. His musical career never ceased, even when the cameras stopped rolling. Danny Koker has always had a rock and roll heart. He was a performer long before he became famous on reality TV. And he is still the lead singer of Count 77, a hard rock band that embodies the raw, real intensity of old 70s music. They are said to still play shows and make records. And when they're on stage, they still bring in a lot of people who remember Danny as more than just a mechanic. In a lot of ways, music seems to be what keeps him grounded. In a world where headlines change all the time and people are always watching him, this is the one part of his life where he's always been in charge. But what about the TV? Could Danny possibly come back on the screen? There is no official news about a reboot of Counting Cars, and there is no confirmation of a new series with Danny. The show that made him famous around the world hasn't had new episodes since 2020, and the History Channel hasn't said anything about its future. Even with all the fan petitions, social media campaigns, and internet discussions, nothing new has come up. The hope is still alive, though. A lot of admirers think Danny isn't done with TV yet, and they hope he'll come back when the moment is perfect. Not just because they miss him, but also because he still has so much to contribute. He has decades of expertise, a lifetime of anecdotes, and a whole automobile culture legacy that hasn't been properly recounted yet. Danny Koker appears happy to do things his own way for now, away from the spotlight and the commotion. He is focusing on what matters most to him, like his businesses, his music, and the people in his inner circle. He might not be the face of primetime auto restoration anymore, but in the world of custom cars, he is still a living legend. Danny Koker might have stepped back at 61. But he hasn't given up. He's still constructing and living life the way he wants to. That's the best kind of legacy anyone could leave behind. But what do you think? Do you want to see Danny Koker come back to TV? Please let us know in the comments below. If you liked this video, please click on the next one on your screen, like it, and subscribe to our channel to get more updates.